Recording in progress.
Cooking it would be my question.
We are just about to start, everyone. So first, I just want to welcome all of you to this special session. Really glad we're going to be focusing on this together. So let me just show you a logistical thing. By now, probably all of you are quite expert at how to work with the technical difficulties that might crop up. But if you do need assistance, just know that these resources are available for you throughout our session today. So I've been asked to talk about emotional resilience and how to cultivate that, especially in the face of climate change. And so most of today's session is going to be on internal strategies, how to do that, what are the range of climate emotions, and how do you recognize them, and more importantly, how to work with them. But I want to acknowledge that I am doing it in the context of bringing more of ourselves, being capable of bringing more of our humanity to the work that we're all doing, in some way connected to sustainability, climate justice, social justice, and just in the same way that things are so interdependent and interconnected, it's going to be reactivating the parts of us, including our intuitive wisdom and our body-based wisdom, and the understanding the signals that our emotions send us, because in fact they're allies to us in this work, and how to apply it to the work that we're all involved in. We'll be doing a little bit of bringing these together in an integrative way, but just wanted to set a context about the why of this work and the emphasis of this work. So why talk about feelings when it comes to climate change and sustainability? And it's because they're here, they're real, they're impactful, and thankfully they are becoming a bit more into the forefront of looking at climate change themes. This quote from the IPCC, which actually came out at an earlier time, even they are acknowledging it, that the physical and economic destruction of climate change surely boggles the mind. But what is not being addressed are the human psychological consequences of all this devastation. And this is true whether you are directly experiencing an impact from climate change, or whether you are tuned into the realities on any level. Because given what I was saying about our true indivisible, inseparable part with the land itself, we're all feeling to varying degrees some of the collective trauma and the collective suffering of this. So how widespread is this exactly, the climate emotions, and how strongly are people feeling it? I want to show you briefly this study that just came out about 2 months ago. There were 10,000 youth, ages 16 to 25, interviewed in 10 countries on their thoughts and feelings about climate change. And you'll see on the far left the global summary here, and on the far right you've got the US numbers. They're similar across the board, but if we focus on the US first, 78% in this group are declaring loudly that people have failed to care for the planet. And they're talking specifically in this case about government inaction and the impacts. More than half say that the future is frightening, and almost half in the US and more than half globally believe that it's too late, that humanity is doomed. Most feel that the things that they value most will be destroyed. And, you know, at this point, we're not going to debate what's true or not true about, is there hope to invest in, or is it too late? But what I just want you to do is get a feel for the pain and how prevalent it is, and especially among the younger populations on this planet, and largely across the board. And you may feel yourself and recognize yourself in these numbers and in these statements. So here's how it's being talked about, with psychology coming in to help create a context for this and some approaches for this. So pre-traumatic stress disorder is the anxiety and the unease about things that are likely to come given the trajectory that we're on. It's absolutely acknowledged that climate change is happening now and the effects are happening now. But there's also this awareness of what's rolling out and what's rolling out quickly. And this particularly has been a heightened pre-traumatic stress disorder has been heightened among climate scientists or anyone working directly in the field of climate change in some way, or who are already feeling the direct impacts. Climate grief, ecological grief, is the intense feelings of loss. And, you know, traditionally, when we think about grief, we often think of the loss of a loved one, but it's any kind of loss. It's the loss of feeling of security. It's the loss of a sense of our future in the way that we might have thought about it 10 years ago. Certainly, the loss in terms of human and animal life, changes to the ecosystem, and so forth. Eco-anxiety is probably the most widely used term. I just read the other day that it jumped about 4,000% 2 years ago in showing up in search engines and in the media. So this shared experience of what do we do with the sense of helplessness around this, the sense of we're really facing an existential crisis here. And then kind of unique terms are trying to come into place to describe and give form to these things that we haven't quite experienced before. So solastalgia is, you haven't gone anywhere, you're in the same place, but there's this sense of being homesick because what is around you in your environment has changed so much. Whether that's the visuals of the landscape or a sense of the seasons being different, or your favorite lake that you used to swim in now being less available due to toxic algae blooms and that type of thing. And then there are words that really aren't widely used, but I think it's significant because it shows how there are so many conflicting thoughts and feelings, things that we haven't had to try and describe before. So here's just a couple out of many that people are coming up with. The first one, empathetic blench, is an experience where maybe a family member or a friend gave you a lovely birthday gift, but it might have been wrapped in a lot of paper. Maybe they're just not tuned in the same way. And so you're also aware of the waste that went into it. And perhaps the gift itself is not one particularly environmentally friendly. And so there's in this moment where you're appreciative of the family member and their thoughts and their love and how they're expressing themselves to you. And it's also now all mixed in with these other levels of awareness related to environmental impacts. Or this one, I think a lot of us have experienced versions of this dissonance, and it's something like enjoying a beautiful sunset, but realizing that the colors are so strong and so distinct because of particulates in the air, maybe due to a nearby wildfire, or not so nearby. As you know, a lot of the fires raging on the West Coast came all the way across the country. So feeling again that ambivalence and that blend of feelings. And in our response to this, wanting to be a part of change, and certainly in the work you do with the land, you are more than most viscerally tuned into the immediacy of these impacts. You know, to know the things you can change and influence, like the way you work with the soil or the water, and the things that you can't, like an early frost, like a drought, like a flood, like wildfire smoke or wildfires themselves. And so there's this, you know, deep desire to be part of the response, part of the care. And so to jump in, you know, there's these other people moving and joining in. But just like most things, there's a kind of skill level involved to do it well. And today we're going to be talking about the emotional skill level, because if you just jump into a race without any training, you probably aren't going to last the distance, especially if it's a marathon. You're going to wear out, you're going to be fatigued, you may have to drop out. And so I like to think of this like an athletic event, in the sense that without the training, we're just compromised in how effective we can be, and the ability to sustain over time. And a really important part of athletic training now that is being recognized more than ever is that recovery time is part of training. So if there's a professional athlete, an Olympic athlete that isn't hitting their goals, one of the first things that they look at now is whether they're using their rest and recovery time well. And it's not just muscular, it's about the effort, it's about the mental push. And this is really relevant to the work we do, because for those of you who are here because it matters and you care, it's sometimes really hard to say, okay, I'm going to take the time to step back, because there's a tremendous sense of urgency around this. But one of the points I want to make is that it's an essential part of staying in the work, is to give ourselves recovery time. So let's talk a little bit about these feelings. You know, I talked about our feelings being our allies. These feelings of distress are signals. They're telling us something is terribly wrong. When we feel anxious, when we feel angry, when we feel grief and sadness, when we feel frustration. And so we don't want to dismiss them. And like so many things in our culture that need to be dismantled and relearning things in a different way, honoring and understanding the messages from our feelings and emotions are part of it. Because there's this widespread belief that if we want to feel better and we want to keep going, just kind of push those feelings aside. Don't feel those things. Not only that, but there's a danger that if I allow myself to really feel and express my sadness, my anger, if I express it, I may just fall into a pit of despair and never get out. And it's maybe a waste of time when there's so much to do. Just kind of grin and bear it and keep going. But neuroscience tells us just the opposite. We get into trouble when we deny our feelings, when we push them down. Because again, they're here for a reason, they're here for a purpose. It's like taking a big ball and trying to hold it underwater. It takes a lot of our focus, a lot of our energy, when all it wants to do and needs to do is pop up. So if we're trying to hold it down, that's when it will show up as depression or angry outbursts and just erodes our energy. So you can think of healthy feelings as ones that flow. That if we recognize them, we validate them, we express them, they're going to move and shift and change, and it's going to give us more energy and not less. So there's really not good feelings and bad feelings. There's just a range of feelings that kind of color our human experience in different shades and different flavors. So we need to do both. We need to activate our intuitive parts that are often dormant. We need to be creative and use our imagination. We need to find ways to reach deep and be determined. But we also need to grow our capacity to tolerate guilt, anxiety, depression. It's really both of these. It's a sense of growing up and out, and it's a sense of growing down. And I really do like to think of this in terms of reclaiming the full range of our human capacities. And that part of the problem we've gotten ourselves into is working from such a siloed, limited, fragmented view of ourselves and life and our interactions with each other. So this is more than only fixing things, right? We do need solutions. But it really is about looking at the deeper root causes and bringing, again, online these internal parts of us. And many people are speaking of this time as a requiem to how we've known life, but also the possibility of a rebirth and kind of a rebirth of consciousness, as well as the ways it can manifest in shifting our systems to ones that are healthier and more just and more fulfilling. And I put these names up here. You may be familiar with some of them, but one of the things I really appreciate is how many disciplines that these voices are coming forward. So we've got Joanna Macy, a really well-known activist and Buddhist practitioner. We've got someone from the Harvard Business School. We've got a Catholic priest. We've got a climate journalist. There's something operating here that they are helping to articulate and that you might be feeling too. And I think sensing into not only the struggles and the difficulties, but the possibilities are a really important part of this journey. One reason it's important to look at how we might transform things is if we look at our evolutionary psychology and how our brain is put together, it works against us a little bit. There's something that we all have called a negativity bias. And what this means is that when we hear about threats, risks, it registers 3 to 5 times more strongly in us than does neutral or positive news. And it's there for a reason. It kind of came at a time when we were having to be much more actively scanning the horizon for immediate threats for the sake of our own survival. But this has lingered, whatever our lifestyle looks like and whatever ways we're living, we have this amplification process. And it's not to say in any way that what we're talking about in terms of climate change should be diminished, but to know that it's amplifying in how you experience it and how you hold it and how you face it. It means that we have to be a little more active and a little more conscious about looking for what's happening in terms of people rising to address this and the positive changes that are coming into place, and an eye on what's possible. So we are about to go into a brief breakout room, and it's a chance to put into practice what we're talking about here. So I'm going to ask you, when you go into your breakout rooms, to take time with these 3 questions, and I'm going to put them on here. And I'm not sure, Amy, are they not going to be visible in the breakout room? So should people jot them down, or?
Yes, if we can, I'll drop them and if folks can copy and paste. I'll drop in the chat box and folks can copy and paste from the chat box.
Okay,
That makes
yes,
sense. Just
thank
give me a
you.
moment, folks, and I will get these in the chat box.
Yeah. While she's doing that, I'm going to offer a suggestion for the structure of this. Rather than it being this time kind of an open conversation, I'm going to invite you to do it in a slightly more structured way. So one of you will be asking the question aloud of the other folks in the room. Some of the things I love about being alive on Earth are, and to allow that person a few moments to answer that on several layers, be with the question. And then you ask the second one, and they take the time, and the third one, and they take the time. So every person has a little bit of time with these questions. We're going to take about 15 minutes in the breakout rooms, so you can kind of time manage that depending how many you're with, but we're going to keep this a pretty small group so that you can really dive into this a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and make that shift.
Can you hear me, Leslie?
Yes.
I accidentally popped myself out of my breakout room number 6.
Okay. Amy,
Oh,
can
no.
you help with that? Yeah, Amy's
Never-
got it.
Oh, maybe I'm supposed to go to room 10. I don't know which.
I put you in a room. Who's speaking?
This
Is
is
this
Susie Techmeyer.
Okay, Susie, you should see an invitation to join room 10.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you. Sorry about that.
You're welcome, no worries.
Looks like there might only be one person in room 5.
Yep, I'm scanning. Oh, that's Doris.
Oh, right, the interpreter. Okay. Mhm.
No, I'm not gonna pause recording because I don't want to stop.
Okay, yeah.
I don't want to forget to resume. I can edit this out.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just checking rooms. 3 folks in 1, 3 folks in 2, 3 folks in 3, 3 folks in 4. 5's a empty room, 3 folks in 6, 2 folks in 7, 3 folks in 8, 2 in 9, and 3 in 10.
That's fantastic.
Okay. Roxanne's in a room. Okay. Roxanne, can you hear me? I added you to room 7. And then Daniel, did you just leave a room?
Yeah, but I did that only so I could turn my microphone on and it kicked me out. So can you put me back in the same room?
Sure. Do you remember which room you were in? Room 3, was it? With Colette and Jules?
I didn't have enough time to look at their names.
Okay, I'll put you in room 3.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you for hanging on, Doris. Appreciate it.
I'm sorry that this is not working.
Better just one than all of them. Although I apologize to Leslie as well. I think what we're gonna do for the recorded content is we're gonna get a dub of this in Spanish.
Great.
Yeah, and we're gonna let folks know before we close out at 6 Eastern time that that'll be available.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Books are in the room. And then, oh, Leslie, for slide 25, do you want me to, is there anything for me? Should I copy and paste on slide 25?
Remind me what it says. I'm not looking at it right now.
Sure, no worries. Let me minimize this, move this over. 25
Oh,
is,
is that the resilient or the
yeah,
climate
oh,
thing?
it's the worksheet.
I'm just going to have people share what came up for them. So there's nothing
Okay.
specific.
Sounds good.
This is good because I know way back when we talked, we were talking about sort of a more structured affinity group, right? And that's kind of what we've got here.
Hi, Denise.
Can you put me back in? I went over to Chrome and they thought that might work. So can you put me back in with whom I was with?
Absolutely. Do you happen to remember their names?
Yeah, Hillary and Kathy Birch.
Okay. Let's see here. Where's Hillary? Okay, room 4. I got you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Amy, would you normally like to broadcast a time note, like at 4 minutes or something, or? Oh, it's, yeah,
It automatically lets folks know. I think I just let the auto toggle like a minute before, but I can broadcast a message to everyone if you'd like at any time.
just to make sure that people get a chance to share, maybe at about 4 minutes, so that there's at least a little bit in case they haven't done a shift.
Okay. It's so we've got 6 minutes left in the rooms. So in 2 minutes, do you want me to leave that, put that out?
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Sure.
Amy, I'm on my phone now, so.
I'll get
can
you
do
back.
that again? I'm so sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Okay.
Where are we? Okay, room 4. There we go.
Okay, join now.
Wow, she's got a lot of devices going. Yeah, perfect.
Hi, Jean. Would you like me to put you back in your room or are you out?
Probably better if I stay out. I'm very distracted with
Okay,
a family thing. So I'll just wait and listen.
okay,
Thanks.
no problem. Yep.
Okay, good. We're in the process of all joining again together. And I know even with just those questions, we could take much more time, but there's other things I also want to offer you. So I'm gonna suggest we keep going. I'm not going to take too much time with this next one, but I wanted you, similar to the negativity bias I described, the way our brains work, there's several things that sort of work against us when it comes to really grasping climate change, because it's a question that comes up like it's so obvious. Why aren't people seeing it? Why aren't they registering it? And I just wanted to show you a few of the things that get in our own way. So there's something called a confirmation bias, and it's a tendency to unconsciously seek out the information that already affirms what we believe. And it's very difficult to open ourselves to that which goes against our values and our existing beliefs. We have a tendency unconsciously to, and again, it's not across the board, or there wouldn't be as much climate anxiety as there is, but many people have this tendency to believe that to keep an emotional distance, that somehow, without thinking it through in any real way, that their life and their future will be brighter than others. And there's also this tendency, partly because of the demands that are on all of us. Oh, somebody's muted. How's that? Okay, great. Okay. That there's an emphasis on dealing with what's in front of us now, partly because our plates are all so full, and partly because the way we're wired makes it hard to embrace a longer term view. for most of us. So I mention this really as a way to bring compassion to ourselves and other people in why it is so challenging, because sometimes what might look like climate apathy is actually an emotional overwhelm and an intolerance of the level of feelings that are arising and not knowing what to do with it. So rather than feeling like people are sort of floundering around in overwhelming feelings, things just kind of shut down. And these are examples of ways that happens. So related to this, we all have what is referred to as a window of tolerance or a zone of resilience. It's all tied into our brain and nervous system. And it has to do with literally how much of our abilities to reason, to be present, are available to us. And if the stress is too high, or we've got just too many things on our plates, we move outside of this middle area or window of tolerance where we can deal with the stresses that face us and do reasonable problem solving and decide whether to take something on right now or postpone it until later. But if we move outside of that, we get into what's sometimes called the land of fire or ice. Above it is we get reactive, we lash out. That ability to kind of moderate our thoughts and think things through on our brain has literally shut down. Or the land of ice is where we disassociate, we numb out, we isolate, we just can't let anything else in. And one hopeful thing about the window of tolerance is that it's not static. It expands and it contracts. The things that help it expand are ways to self-regulate. As I talked about earlier, it's important to have recovery time, rest time, self-care. Some of it's really basic. You know, just think about it. If you haven't slept well in 3 or 4 days in a row, it's just harder to deal with the things that are part of your day. Or, you know, think about the hyperarousal, the land of fire. You know, if you're really triggered, you kind of know it's not the best time to try and have a difficult conversation. It's why people step back and have kind of a cooling down period and then come back and address it again. And what's happening there is we're moving back into the window of tolerance. So when it comes to climate change, whether it's education, conversations with friends or family or peers, it's really helpful to do something called toggling, which is being with the compassionate truth telling, not sugarcoating what's going on, but then being able to check in with what's happening. Are we in a state of overwhelm? Do we need to take a break? What do we need to do for ourselves so that we can re-engage again? And it's that ability to go back and forth between intense work, intense information, and the self-care that lets us stay in our window and ultimately stay engaged over time. So emotional resiliency, which is another way of talking about staying in that window of tolerance, needs a new definition as far as I'm concerned. Traditionally, it's talked about the ability to emotionally bounce back from stress. And whatever your functioning is, you know, something really big happens, how quickly can you get back to where you were before? The reason I think it doesn't work as well in the face of climate change is there's no going back to the before. Even if we get really good at mitigating some of this and slowing it down and turning some things around and getting some needed change in there, we're still on a trajectory where things are going to become more difficult for some time. And so I want to propose that emotional resiliency now is cultivating the ability to remain present, grounded, open-minded, empathetic, open-hearted in the face of increasing stress. So it's an ability to bear witness to and be with more. So if you take that and apply it to what we were talking about with the window of tolerance, it's really asking everyone to work on stretching that, to move into kind of a stretch zone and increase our self-care too. So I want to guide you through a particular emotional resiliency tool, which is often inclusive of how to self-regulate and calm the nervous system. So this is going to be meditative in nature. It also may help us get in touch with more undervalued ways of knowing, ways of sensing through our bodies, through our emotions, through our intuition, a kind of deep inner listening. So I'm going to take a little over 5 minutes for this. And I'm going to ask you if you're comfortable to join me, which would involve either closing your eyes or just letting them have a soft focus. And as you do that, the first thing I would like you to do is become aware of the soles of your feet. Become aware of the sensations. You're pulling all your awareness down to that part of your body. So you may notice warmth or coolness. You may notice textures of shoes or socks or the floor, depending where you are. And just have a sense of being present in your feet, embodying them with conscious awareness. And as you do that, let them rest. If you remember what it feels like to hold something like a smooth river stone in the palm of your hand, that stone is just totally surrenders its weight. It doesn't push with an effort. It doesn't lift away from your hand. It just fully rests. And let that be kind of a guide to the feeling of your feet really resting on the floor. And then adding on to that, not leaving it, but adding on to that an awareness of your ankles, shins, and calves. Just noticing any simple sensations and being present in your body. Adding on your knees and thighs and hips. You might begin to notice the support of the chair or whatever you're sitting on. Adding your torso, your spine, and starting to sense a little more subtly the internal organs. And can they feel natural, resting? Even though they're working, but a quality of ease. Adding your shoulders and noticing how your arms and hands are resting. Adding your neck and throat. Your jaw. Your face all the way to the top of your head, and feeling again that full body, three-dimensional sensation of being present. I'd like you to especially see if you can relax your eyes so that they're not just closed, but they're quiet. They're resting. And often as you do that, it really supports the mind to quiet behind your eyes. While we're focusing on the body, you may also sense, feel, or just recall the earth below. And the sky around and above you. And even though we're in different rooms, the ways that we are here together. Now bring your focus for just a moment to your breath. You may want to take a few breaths that are a little fuller and a little deeper, but keep it comfortable. And really notice that when you breathe in, it's a replenishing breath. You are filling up, it's fresh energy. And when you breathe out, you're releasing, you're letting go, and you're emptying out. So let each of those two parts be balanced, full, and complete. And begin to sense, and you can begin by just reflecting and imagining that this is a very ancient rhythm, this filling up and the emptying out. We see it in the rhythm of day and night. In the waxing and waning of the moon. In the ebb and flow of the tides. And in the turning of the seasons. And I'd like you to now imagine sending your awareness back down to your feet and then down into the earth, just traveling with ease through floor or foundation or whatever is there, knowing that energetically and imaginatively that is possible. And it may not come in words, but I would like you to be in a place of receptive listening of any messages, images, feelings, impressions that arise as you listen to the voice of the earth itself. I'm going to take just a moment more, but if you do have an impression, feel free that it becomes an internal dialogue. If there's anything you want to express or ask, you can feel that flow going in both directions. It may just come as a feeling. It doesn't have to be words. Okay. If you sense anything of value, of interest, that feels important in any way or curious, I'd like you just to imprint it. We remember things not just with our minds, we remember things with our bodies, with our emotions. So feel yourself bringing back anything of value as you gently reorient toward our conversation here together. And when you feel ready, go ahead and open your eyes. One thing about self-care, I've been talking a lot about the reluctance to step away and attend to ourselves, partly because I hear it so often. But this is a really interesting thing that's been discovered, again, in neuroscience, is that our nervous systems begin to regulate with each other. In other words, our feelings and states of being and qualities of presence are contagious. So whenever you take the time to ground yourself, to feel more calm, you actually are transmitting it, whether you say a word about that or not. And you know, some of this is common sense. If you've ever been in a group and somebody walks in who's kind of angry or agitated, it's really easy to feel the atmosphere shift. Or sometimes you just have a really good friend. It doesn't matter what you do, you just kind of always feel better. And it's often happening at that level. So that anything you do to attend to yourself in these ways, you are doing for community and for others. You know, I am going to jump ahead because I always do this where I plan to offer you much more than I can in the time we have. So I am going to come to this questionnaire. If you happen to have taken the time to print out the worksheet, great. If you haven't, I am going to add it into the chat, but you will need a piece of paper for this and something to write with. So we are going to do this part together. I'm going to say it aloud to get you started, and then I'll write it in here. I'd like you to list 3 things, 1, 2, 3. They could be actions, perspectives, behaviors, either that you are not already doing that you'd like to take up that would have a positive impact for the environment, or it could be adding to something you're already involved in, something that would deepen or expand those efforts. So, quick list of 3 things. Okay, and now, some of you I'm sure could make a much longer list, but for the sake of time, we'll just do 3. Out of those 3, put a star or circle the one that is likely to have the most impact. Okay. With that starred item, list 3 specific things you can do or would need to do to begin the process, to set it in motion, to expand or deepen the impact of your work. This is really more like action steps. Okay, and then out of those 3, I want you to also indicate with a star or circle it, the one that makes sense to start with, either because that's the starting point or because it might be the biggest priority. Okay, now that you've got that first step, are there any reasons not to start with that one? And if so, go ahead and make an adjustment. Because we want to keep this realistic. what are some of the benefits if you follow through? How would you feel if you follow through with this? Take a minute just to write a little bit about that. So, knowing what you do about yourself and a realistic sense of your life situation, your time, the time you have, what are any potential obstacles, let's say up to 3, that could get in the way of you moving forward? Well, we all need to find our way to this. We're not ever meant to be doing this alone. So the next one is the actual worksheet is on my speakers page as a download handout. What kind of support would help you follow through and get you on track? Practical, other people? What do you need? And last one, where can you get that support? Are you willing to set that up now? Okay. So I was going to send you back into breakout rooms to really talk through this and hear each other's ideas. But what I would like to do instead, because we have such little time left, is just to open this up for a conversation. I'm going to stop my screen share, and we can all put on your videos if you have a video option, and just be in this together a little bit. So a couple things we can do with this time. One is if things came up on this questionnaire that you'd like to talk about, you want to share, maybe some of the support and resources is even available within this group. There's space for that. But I also want to just open this up for a broader sense of questions and answers. I presented a lot of material. We had a lot of experiences, but what else has bubbled up for you or you were hoping we might talk about that we haven't gotten to yet? I want to allow space for that too. So my suggestion, I can't always see who's raising their hand with the number of people we have. So I would suggest you just unmute and go ahead if you'd like to share. Kathy, I actually do see your hand. Go ahead.
That was amazing. And I usually do not respond to this sort of situation. That your slides were so rich, and I was wishing I had the skill to do screenshots. And then I discovered one of the people in my breakout room had responded the same way to one of your slides and had taken a screenshot. So all of this is, you know, sort of overwordy praise for what you've offered us, and leading to a question of which maybe Amy can answer. Can we access any of this afterwards?
Yes, let me offer something and then Amy can help out too. I had actually tried to upload a PDF of the PowerPoint to handouts, but it was too big of a file. So Amy, would there be a way to send a PDF by follow-up email or some other way?
Yeah, so Kathy and Leslie, we will have all recorded content from the conference available to all attendees. And we ask folks to just keep your eyes on your email. in the next few weeks for an access code to the area where you can find all of the content. And if folks have requested specific PDFs, I've flagged that, and I'll be sure to include that in that site.
And
Yes,
then will
and I-
that be more Hoover app, or will it be straight through WFAN?
It will be straight through WFAN. It will be on WFAN's webpage.
Thank you.
and-
Yeah,
and
you're
Amy,
welcome.
You're welcome to convert my PowerPoint since you have a copy, although I'll send you an updated one. I fiddled with it a little bit, and it can be a PDF.
Okay.
Great. Anything else?
I guess, Leslie, what would you recommend? I know we tried to talk a lot in some of the work we've done in the past year with WFAN through our growing community resilience program, accountability, like holding each other accountable to some of, especially what we just did through the worksheet. So what would be your recommendations for next steps for us as we're identifying the one thing that, and I identified my biggest obstacle is still gonna be myself. And like, I've identified the thing that I want to do. And so anyway, what would be your recommendations about next steps for us?
Well, I don't know that I have a very strong understanding of structurally how WFAN is organized in terms of follow-up meetings and things like that could support this. So that might be a follow-up conversation I could have with some of you. But in addition to that, it might be forming partners in terms of some of that next step of support, especially depending, I wonder, maybe we can even quickly do this in the chat, depending on the direction you want to go. If there are others that are kind of wanting to do a similar thing, it would be a great time to connect. So I wonder if in chat we could just do a word or a phrase of kind of where you want to lean into with this work. And that'll also help you identify each other that way. So go ahead and just enter it in. While that's happening, I'm happy to field any other questions in the last couple minutes we have. Co-regulation, so fantastic. And that, just as a reminder, that's our ability to influence each other. And in that subtle way of however we work with our own quality of presence is contagious. That's what co-regulation is referring to. And I do not know much research on this, but I am convinced that that's not just limited to human nervous systems. We know of things like forest bathing and what happens when we're out in those kinds of environments, or with animals. And so I think there's a whole field there just ready to be opened up about extensions of co-regulation. Regular community sharing circles, program expanding, working with kids. I will say on the working with kids front, I don't mean for this to be a plug, but I just had a book come out that was written for 8 through 12-year-olds. And it specifically pairs climate science with emotional resiliency tools. And I've been talking to get this into public school systems, even not those that are working on climate curriculum, to do it with an emotional intelligence, emotional resiliency piece. So it was written for kids to do themselves. And this just has lots of exercises in it, but could also be adapted to use in groups or classrooms, things like that. Let's see, planting native perennials. Kids, yeah. Oh, I so wish we had more time.
Leslie, can I ask you a question?
Yes, of course.
If I can share a link for that book right now in the chat box, would you like me to pull it from your website?
Sure. Well, actually, the publisher doesn't allow me to sell it directly. So maybe the publisher's website, which is called Imagination with an M, Imagination
Okay.
Press. And
All right.
it's actually the children's book division of the American Psychological Association.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll just mention too, I'm going to put my email in chat.
I'm here.
So there was a lot that we great didn't get to, and I do welcome you to reach out to me or follow up if there's other ways I can assist. Okay, well, I think we're there, right, Amy, time-wise? I think so. All right.
Hi, Leslie. Sorry, I was scrambling to try to find that link.
Oh, look, someone put it up there. There it is.
Jess has it. Thank you, Jess. Thank you so much, Leslie. This was
you
really
all.
just what an amazing session to end our conference with. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. All right, bye.
Thanks, everyone.